Tonight, somewhere, someone will pour a drink, crack a beer, raise a glass. It feels like the most human thing in the world, a habit we invented, somewhere between the first farms and the first cities. But that story is wrong. The taste for alcohol didn't start with us. It's older than farming, older than language, older than our species itself, a craving written into your DNA around 10 million years ago. So when did the first creature on Earth actually get drunk? The answer isn't a person, it's not even human. And it changes what drinking really is. Let's start with the version you've probably heard. Alcohol, the story goes, is a byproduct of civilization. Once humans settled down and started farming, growing grain, storing it, letting it get damp, some of it fermented by accident. We tasted the result, we liked it, and beer was born. By that logic, drinking is maybe 9,000 years old, a happy little accident of the agricultural age. And for a long time, serious scientists believed exactly that. Some assumed our bodies only learned to handle alcohol after we started brewing it. It's a clean, tidy story. It's also completely backwards, because the proof that it's wrong isn't buried in some ancient village. It's inside you, right now. To find it, you need a molecule with a boring name and an extraordinary history. It's called ADH4. It's an enzyme, and it lines your mouth, your throat, your stomach. It's the very first thing that touches alcohol when you drink, and the first thing that starts breaking it down. Almost every primate has some version of it. But here's the strange part. In most of them, lemurs, baboons, that enzyme barely works on alcohol at all. It just can't process the stuff. So why can yours? In 2014, a scientist named Matthew Kerrigan, working in Gainesville, Florida, set out to answer that exact question. And to do it, he did something that sounds like science fiction. He brought the dead back to life. Not people, proteins. Kerrigan and his team took the ADH4 gene from 19 living primates, and they ran evolution in reverse, reconstructing what that same enzyme must have looked like at point after point, stretching back nearly 70 million years. Then they rebuilt those ancient extinct enzymes in the lab, and they tested each one. Could it break down alcohol, or couldn't it? And buried in that timeline, they found a single moment where everything changed. For most of the story, the enzyme was useless. Our tree-dwelling ancestors, going back 50 million years, could barely process ethanol at all. Then, right around 10 million years ago, one tiny mutation appeared. A single change to a single building block in a single gene. And almost overnight, in evolutionary time, the enzyme became 40 times better at breaking down alcohol. 40 times, from one accident. So what happened 10 million years ago? Something simple and enormous. The world was cooling, Africa's forests were shrinking, breaking apart into open ground, and our ancestors were climbing down out of the trees. Up in the canopy they'd eaten fresh fruit, straight off the branch. But down on the forest floor, the fruit was different. It had fallen. It had split open. It had been sitting in the heat for days, while wild yeast crept in and quietly turned its sugar into alcohol. To most animals, that overripe fruit was mild poison, something to avoid. But to an ape carrying that brand new enzyme, it was a windfall, free calories lying on the ground that almost nothing else could safely eat. And the alcohol wasn't just safe to eat, it was useful. Ethanol has a smell, a sharp, sweet, boozy scent, and that scent drifts on the wind. So a faint whiff of alcohol became a map. It pointed straight at ripe, sugar-rich, energy-dense food, sometimes from far away. Follow your nose to the booze, and you'd find the calories. And there was a bonus. Alcohol doesn't just lead you to food, it makes you hungrier for it. That same little appetite kick you feel from a drink before dinner was already at work 10 million years ago. Find the fruit, then eat even more of it. In the year 2000, a biologist named Robert Dudley at the University of California, Berkeley, gave this whole idea a name, the drunken monkey hypothesis. The apes who were drawn to that scent ate better. They found more food, faster, so they survived better and had more children. And the ones without the mutation? They got sick and drunk off a single piece of fruit. Clumsy, vulnerable, easy prey, nature's original cheap dates. And so, across millions of years, the attraction stuck. It sank into the family tree. It became instinct. It became yours. Which leaves us with an uncomfortable thought. If this craving is really that old, older than farming, older than us, then we shouldn't be the only ones who still feel it. And we aren't. Right now, in the forests of West Africa, our closest living relatives are doing the very same thing. In Bossou, a village in Guinea, researchers watched wild chimpanzees do something remarkable. The local people tap palm trees for sap, and in the heat, that sap ferments into a mild, cloudy palm wine. The chimps worked it out. They chewed leaves into little sponges, dipped them down into the containers, lifted them dripping to their mouths, and drank. Again and again. That sap ran around 3% alcohol on average, and sometimes crept towards 7, roughly a light beer, occasionally a strong one. And over 17 years of watching, the team caught them doing it more than 50 times, not once, by accident. A habit. And then, in April of 2025, something even stranger. In Cantanhez National Park, in Guinea-Bissau, hidden motion-triggered cameras caught wild chimpanzees doing something we'd always thought was ours alone. A team led by a researcher named Anna Boland from the University of Exeter filmed the chimps finding fermented breadfruit, tested, confirmed, laced with alcohol, and then sharing it, passing it hand to hand, not snatching, not fighting over it, sharing it together. It's the first time science has ever documented wild animals drinking alcohol as a group. And the researchers had a careful word for what they might be watching: the deep, distant beginnings of the feast. On its own, that fermented breadfruit was weak, well under 1%. But chimps eat fruit by the kilo, for hours a day. Add it all up, and one recent estimate puts a wild chimp's daily dose at the rough equivalent of 1 or 2 human drinks. Not nothing. Every single day. So the instinct is ancient, the sharing is ancient. But there is one thing that really is ours, one line we crossed that no chimp ever has. We stopped waiting for the fruit to rot, and we started making the alcohol ourselves. For that moment, we go to a village called Jiahu on the Yellow River in China. There, in the ground, archaeologists found pottery jars 9,000 years old. And a biomolecular archaeologist named Patrick McGovern at the University of Pennsylvania scraped the ancient residue from inside them and ran it through a chemical analysis. Those jars had held a drink. A deliberate one, brewed from rice, from honey, and from hawthorn fruit. The oldest recipe ever found. It's older than the first grape wines of the Middle East by well over 1,000 years, older than the first barley beer of ancient Sumer. When we picture the birthplace of drinking, we picture the ancient Near East, the so-called cradle of civilization. And we're looking on the wrong continent, thousands of years too late. 9,000 years ago, before writing, before the wheel, someone in that village on the Yellow River was mixing ingredients in a jar and waiting, patiently, for them to ferment, on purpose. And McGovern noticed something that flips our whole history on its head. Look at the very first plants humans ever bothered to farm. And a striking number of them are plants you can brew. Which led him to a genuinely wild question. We've always assumed our ancestors settled down, planted crops, and built villages so they could bake bread. But what if that's backwards too? What if some of them settled down, and farmed, and waited, and worked the land, not for the food, but for the drink? And here's where a 10-million-year-old gift quietly turns on us. That craving was built for a very specific world. A world of fallen fruit. Alcohol at 1 or 2%, wrapped up in sugar and fiber and vitamins, hard to find, and almost impossible to overdo. But we are clever animals. We took that faint signal, and we concentrated it. We turned 2% into 40. We threw away the fruit and kept only the buzz. And your brain still reads it the way it did on that forest floor, as a bright green light that means food, safety, reward. Deep in your head, the same reward chemicals fire. The dopamine, the ease, the warmth, exactly as they were meant to fire when they were paying off a hungry ape for finding a meal. It simply doesn't know that the fruit is gone. Robert Dudley has a name for this too. He calls it an evolutionary hangover, an ancient compass, still pointing, but now pointing us somewhere it was never built to go. So the next time you raise a glass, look at what's actually in your hand. Not an invention, not a modern vice, an echo. 10 million years ago, on a darkening forest floor, an ape caught a scent on the wind. Soft, sweet, fermenting, and followed it, and bit into a piece of fruit that had gone warm and heavy and sweet. That ape lived because it wanted more. And a little of that wanting got handed down, parent to child, all the way across 10 million years, to you. You never invented the drink. You only inherited the thirst,